Becky. Welcome to my channel. If you are new and if you're already subscribed to me, thank you for being part of my YouTube channel family. If you haven't subscribed to me yet, you definitely should. I upload every single week. I make tons of different types of videos about cleaning and organizing and homeschooling and lifestyle videos. So if you like those types of videos, definitely make sure you subscribe. I would be glad to have you as part of my YouTube channel family. Today I'm talking about something pretty serious that I've gotten a lot of questions about or a lot of comments about over the last few months with quarantine and social distancing and parenting through all of this. Like, people have been wanting to know and wanting advice and suggestions for how to help kids during a crisis, how to help kids out during quarantine, how to help with kids' anxiety because of everything that's going on in the world right now. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Really, my opinion on the best way to approach this situation that we're all in with the quarantine and the social distancing and all the things you hear on the news about what's going on. This is just my perspective, my opinion, and my suggestions of how to help kids during this crisis. And I'm going to start by saying I'm not a child psychologist. I am not a therapist. I am not a perfect parent. I don't have all the answers. These are just things that I have found that have worked the best for us. Not just in this situation, but really any situation where there can be fear and kids can be scared. These are kind of how we typically approach things like that. And I thought I would share it with you guys because I have been getting a lot of questions about people wanting to know, like, how do you help your kids through this crisis? How do we talk to our kids about what's going on in the world? I don't know how much of what's going on is true and accurate, but whether it is or not, we're still having to live through the consequences, and so are our kids. And I think as parents, we tend to think and we tend to get caught up in what we have to handle as adults. So keeping them safe, dealing with unemployment or jobs, trying to find groceries, toilet paper, political issues. There's so many things that we get caught up in thinking about that we may not realize that this is affecting our kids for sure, just as much as it's affecting us, even though it may be in different ways. And some kids are going to be fine with it. Other kids are going to seem fine with it and maybe really are secretly struggling. And other kids just are really, really struggling and having lots of issues. So these are just a few tips that I am using with my kids that we pretty much consistently use anytime there's a scary situation or anxiety or something going on. I think these kind of 8 tips are pretty much applicable to any situation, but especially right now. But they are just my opinion, my perspective. Feel free to take them or leave them as you please, but I thought it might be helpful to some of you guys. So the first thing is, talk about it with your kids without oversharing. Sometimes we think if our kids don't bring it up, they must not be thinking about it. And that's definitely not always the case, especially if you have a kid that tends to hold things in like I do. They might be struggling and you wouldn't even know it. So talking about it and starting the conversation with them can really be all it takes for them to open up to you and let you know kind of how they're feeling. At the same time, I don't feel like you should overshare as the parent. I don't think you should tell them too many details. And of course, that's up to you to decide, age appropriate level, what they need to know. But at least the basics of what's going on, why their lives are being affected, why things are a little bit different, but still giving them comfort and reassurance that you're going to take care of them, you're going to provide for them, and they're still safe. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, we've all had disappointments, some of us more than others. And there are so many things that we can't do right now. We are not able to go to Disney World right now, which is a big trip for us. We all look forward to it every year. The girls were really disappointed. My youngest daughter didn't get to finish her dance lessons or have her recital, even though we already paid for the costume. My oldest daughter had a dance. We bought her a dress for her. She wasn't able to go. Like, so many disappointments that they've had. I know a lot of kids aren't getting to graduate from high school or college, or they're missing prom and things like that. So there are a lot of disappointments that have already happened, and there's a lot more things that we're not going to be able to do maybe, or do them the way we want to do them in the next couple months. So instead of focusing on what you can't do with your kids and what they can't do, try to focus on what they can do. And even if that means sitting down and making a list with them, okay, we can't go to Disney World, but what else can we do this summer that you guys want to do that you think would be fun? And then you research and find out, like, are there restrictions? Are those places open? Things like that. But really focus on what they can do that they want to do instead of just focusing on what they can't do and what they're disappointed about. The third thing is to be as positive as possible. And as parents, it is really hard to stay positive sometimes when there is so much negativity on the news, on social media, everywhere you look, newspapers. There are constantly people being negative about the situation, trying to scare people, talking about, the vaccine. I don't want a vaccine. I do want a vaccine. You should wear a mask. You shouldn't wear a mask. Like, All of these things that are constantly, the adults are fighting amongst themselves, and the politicians are fighting amongst themselves, and the news people and news channels are fighting amongst themselves. It can be really easy to get caught up in that. So it's really important for you as the parent to stay as positive as possible. Kids are little sponges, and they like to emulate what they see in front of them. And if they see you being negative and scared and grumpy and cantankerous, they're going to be negative and scared and grumpy and cantankerous. If they see you focusing on the things that you can't do and you're mad about, they're going to focus on the things that they can't do and they're mad about. And that's just going to be a vicious cycle that you're creating. So try as best as you can to be positive. It would also be a good idea this time, if you don't already, to have your kids and for yourself to start a gratitude journal. Even if it's just a couple things they write down every single day that they're thankful for. Because even though our lives have changed a lot and we have a lot of disappointments and we have a lot of things we can't do the way we wanted to do them or the way we used to do them, or we have less income coming in or something like that, there are still so many blessings that we all have every single day. And it can really help for you and for your kids to sit down and write those down, a couple things every single day that they're thankful for, just to be mindful of the fact that yes, there are things that we can't do and can't have, but we do have plenty of other things that are blessings. My fourth tip is not to let the kids watch the news. I never let my kids watch news, but especially when there's something like this going on. Now, if there's like an election or like a big, historical event, swearing in ceremony or something, I would let them watch that. But as far as like the daily news and the people hashing over what they think is going to happen, which may or may not even happen anyway, people arguing and just all the stuff that goes on the news, I just really feel like it's a negative thing for kids to see. We also don't know how much of the news is true. You can watch one news channel and they say one thing, you can watch another news channel, they say another thing. I really don't think it's a good thing for kids to be watching, but especially in a situation like this when there are so many scary numbers and stories coming out, and of course the news is going to spin it to whatever they want. I think it's too much for a lot of adults to process. I don't watch the news either, and I think it's definitely too much for kids to process. So I recommend not letting kids watch the news. The fifth thing I would recommend pretty much anytime, but especially when there is a crisis going on or a lot of stressful things happening either in the world or just in their personal life, is to keep them busy. I do this for myself as well. I make sure that I stay busy, I exercise, I'm pretty much trying to stay active all the time. And kids really need that as well. They need routines, they need structure, they need exercise. All of these things are really important to everybody's daily life, but especially when everything else in the world seems to be falling down around you. It could be chores, family time, exercise, schoolwork, just these basic things that keep their minds busy, keep them active, and not just sitting around all day sleeping, watching TV, and playing video games. Those things are fine in moderation, but I mean, they need other things to do. They need to keep their brains and their bodies active, and that really helps to give them a sense of normalcy to do those things. Also, it's just good for you in general to be able to have control over certain things in your life. You can't control what's going on around you, but it gives you comfort, I think, to know that there are certain things you can control and there are certain things that haven't changed, and that is a daily routine to stick with. The sixth thing I would recommend is to encourage them to express their feelings. So if they are a vocal child, just sitting down and talking to you, if they are the type kid that really can't express what they want to say verbally, then maybe a journal. My girls and I pass a journal back and forth a couple nights a week anyway, just all the time. But especially right now, it would be a good idea if you want to start a journal with them and they can write. Maybe let them have this journal. They can write whatever they want. They can ask you questions and talk about their fears or their concerns or their disappointments. And then they pass it to you and you answer them back. That could be a really, really good tool for your kids. And it's something that actually can turn out to be fun. Like I said, my girls and I do it all the time. We've used blank journals before. We've gotten like writing prompt books from Amazon where it kind of tells you what to write. You kind of fill in the blanks. It's just really fun to communicate back and forth that way, and you learn a lot about each other in the process. However your child communicates best, make sure that you're taking that time to communicate with them and listening to them and hearing their thoughts and fears and concerns. Also really important to be honest. And like I talked about in the first tip, you don't want to overshare, but you do want to be honest with them and let them know kind of what's going on, however you think, whatever you think is an age appropriate thing for them to know. But assure them that life will come back. Life will get back to normal at some point. Now, it may not ever look exactly the same. It may be a new normal, but things are going to be okay. We are going to make it through this. It's a learning curve for everybody. And of course, we're going to make mistakes along the way, but they're not going to be stuck at home forever. You know, you're not going to be able to not go anywhere and see your friends forever. It's just a matter of being able to be honest with them that you don't know the answers, but whatever comes, you will take care of them and you'll figure it out together. And the eighth thing that I think is really important with any crisis situation is balancing precaution with fear. And this is something that a lot of people struggle with, including myself, because you do get caught up in thinking, well, what if this is true? What if this isn't true? What if I need to do this? What if I shouldn't do this? And you get so caught up in that that you really get honestly strangled, and you cannot live your life if you have all of these questions, all of these doubts, all of these insecurities. And God gave us all brains and He gave us all common sense. So He wants us to use our brains to do what we think is the best thing, what we can just do, things that we can do that we can control, taking as many precautions as we can without living in fear, without digging a hole in the ground and living there and never coming out. You know, washing your hands and taking a few extra precautions, but also not living your life in fear, because He is in control of this. He has a plan in mind and a fate designed for all of us individually and as a country. And while we may not like what that may bring, that's a very scary thing to let that go and realize that God's got it in control, and it may not be, my life may not be what I want it to be again, or it may not be what I want it to be for a long time. But that doesn't mean that it's not what God is planning for me and what God is planning for us as a country. And that's a really, really hard thing to let go of, especially for control freaks like me. I like to know, I like to do what I want to do, and I like to kind of feel like I'm having control over my own life, but really none of us does. Nothing will happen to us individually or as a society or as a country or as a world that is not in God's plan. He is working this out for our good, and it may not be something that we like. You know, it's like when you're a kid and your parents punish you for your own good. Most of the time, it is for your own good and you don't like it, but it is something that is teaching you a lesson or keeping you safe, whatever the situation is. And it's the same thing with this. We may not like how things are headed for us. We may not like how long this lasts, or how long we have to worry about these precautions, or how long this is an issue in our daily lives. We may not like that. We may not like some of the outcomes that have come from this situation, but it's definitely something that God has in His control. He has a plan for it, and there is peace in that. It's just really, really hard for a lot of us to balance that precaution with fear and being too afraid of what's going on also. So just throwing that out there, if that makes sense. I really hope that these tips were helpful. Again, I'm not a professional. I'm not a psychologist or a therapist. I'm just a mom who has done the best that she can to help her kids through this situation, who's tried to stay positive throughout this whole thing. And I thought maybe these tips might be helpful for you guys. If they were, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments, what tips and suggestions do you have for helping kids when they're dealing with a stressful time or a crisis like right now. I'd be really interested to know what your tips and suggestions are. So if you have any, please leave them in the comments. That way they'll be helpful to me and anybody else that happens to read them. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.